Hey, old man. You ever actually throw a punch, or you just clean up after real fighters? The voice cut through the quiet like a blade. Malik paused, his grip tightening slightly on the mop handle. He turned slowly to see Darius Grant standing in the doorway, black belt tied perfectly around his waist, flanked by 3 younger students who'd stayed late. Darius was 28, muscular, confident to the point of arrogance, his smile sharp and calculating. Just finishing up, sir. Be out of your way in a minute, Malik replied, his voice soft, even. Darius stepped further into the gym, his students trailing behind like shadows. Nah, don't rush on our account. Actually, we were just talking about respect. About hierarchy. About knowing your place. He gestured broadly at the mats. You've been mopping these floors for what, 2 years now? Ever wonder what it feels like to actually step on them? To fight? The students snickered. One of them, a cocky 18-year-old named Bryce, chimed in, probably can't even make a fist properly. Look at those old hands. Malik said nothing. At 62, he'd learned that silence carried its own power. His dark, weathered hands gripped the mop handle with a steadiness that spoke of decades, not of weakness, but of patience refined by time. The fluorescent lights of Dragon's Den martial arts hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the polished Toronto gym floor. It was past 11 on a Thursday night, and the heavy bags in the corner still swayed gently from the evening's final class. The air smelled of sweat, rubber mats, and the faint citrus of cleaning solution Malik had been using. Dragon's Den occupied the second floor of an old converted warehouse in Toronto's West End, near the junction. During the day, it was filled with the sounds of discipline, instructors calling out techniques, students keying in unison, the sharp crack of pads being struck. But at night, after everyone left, it became Malik's domain. 2 years he'd worked here, arriving at 10:30 when the last class ended, leaving by 2 in the morning when everything gleamed. He'd taken the job after his previous position at a hospital was eliminated due to budget cuts. At his age, work was work, and dignity was something you carried inside, not something others could give or take away. Or so he believed until tonight. Tell you what, Darius continued, his voice dripping with false generosity. How about a little demonstration? Just for fun. Show these young guys the difference between someone who's dedicated their life to the art and someone who just, well, cleans. He spread his arms wide, inviting, mocking. Come on, Malik. 1 round. Light contact. Educational purposes only. The trap was set. Malik could feel it closing around him, the same trap he'd avoided for 15 years, ever since he'd walked away from his past and chosen the quiet dignity of invisible work. The other students pulled out their phones, already angling for the best view. Maya Chen, a 19-year-old brown belt with aspirations of becoming an Instagram influencer, was already setting up her phone on a tripod. This was content. This was engagement. This was a story that would get shares and likes. I don't think that's necessary, Malik said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of something ancient and unmovable. Oh, I think it is. Darius's smile widened, teeth flashing white against his dark skin. Unless you're scared. I mean, I get it, you're old, you're tired, probably got arthritis or something. But come on, just 1 minute. Let these kids see what real training looks like compared to, you know. He gestured vaguely at Malik's janitorial uniform, the navy blue shirt with rivers stitched over the pocket, the work pants worn thin at the knees. The laughter came louder now. Another student, a stocky kid named Jordan who'd been training for 6 months, added his voice to the mockery. Yeah, come on, old-timer. Show us your moves. I bet you learned everything from watching YouTube videos while mopping, right? Maya giggled, adjusting her camera angle. This is going to be gold. Make sure you get his face when Darius sweeps him. The disrespect hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Malik had experienced this before, of course. In his 2 years at Dragon's Den, he'd been largely invisible to the students and instructors. They walked past him without acknowledgement, left their gear scattered for him to organize, tracked mud across floors he'd just cleaned. It was the casual invisibility that came with certain jobs, certain ages, certain positions in the social hierarchy. He'd made peace with it, or thought he had. But something in Darius's casual cruelty, in the way he wielded his youth and belt like weapons against dignity, in the way he'd orchestrated this humiliation for his students' entertainment, touched something deep in Malik's chest. A memory. A promise he'd made long ago to a man whose voice he could still hear across the decades. Master Chen Wei had been 73 when Malik first met him in Hong Kong. It was 1985, and Malik had been 25 years old, angry at the world, running from a life in Toronto that had offered him nothing but closed doors and lowered expectations. He'd saved for 2 years to make the trip, following rumors of a master who taught in a small school in Kowloon, above a restaurant that sold dim sum. "You come here to learn to hurt people?" Master Chen had asked that first day, his English accented but clear, his eyes sharp despite his age. "I come here to learn to protect myself," Malik had replied. "Same thing, sometimes. Different thing, other times." Master Chen had gestured for him to sit. "I teach you to fight, yes. But more important, I teach you when not to fight. You understand?" Malik hadn't understood, not then. But over the next 15 years, training in that small school while working odd jobs to survive, he'd learned. He'd learned that martial arts wasn't about dominance or ego. It was about discipline, about understanding your body and mind so completely that violence became unnecessary. It was about respect, for your opponent, for the art, for yourself. Master Chen had died in 2000, and Malik had returned to Toronto shortly after, carrying his teacher's lessons like precious cargo. He'd taken whatever work he could find, intentionally avoiding martial arts gyms, avoiding anything that might pull him back into a world he'd left behind. He'd built a quiet life, raised a daughter on his own after his wife passed, and found peace in simplicity. Until tonight, when a young man with a black belt and no wisdom decided to use him as a prop for entertainment. "I appreciate the offer," Malik said, setting down his mop carefully. "But I don't think. See? He's chickening out already." Darius turned to his students, playing to the audience. "This is what I'm talking about. In life, there are doers and there are cleaners. People who take action and people who just watch from the sidelines." He pointed at Malik. "This man has spent his whole life on the sidelines. Too afraid to step up. Too comfortable being small." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Malik felt something shift in his chest, not anger, but something colder and more focused. A clarity he hadn't felt in 15 years. "You don't know anything about my life," Malik said quietly. "I know enough." Darius shrugged. "I know you're 60-something years old, mopping floors at a gym where people half your age are achieving their dreams. I know that if you had any real skills, any real discipline, you'd be doing something more with your life than pushing dirty water around." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate in its cruelty. "I know that you're exactly where you deserve to be." Bryce whistled. "Damn, coach. You didn't have to murder him like that." Jordan laughed. "That's cold, man." "True, but cold." Maya's camera captured everything, her finger hovering over the Go Live button on Instagram. Malik looked at Darius for a long moment. He saw a young man who'd been given just enough success to become dangerous, dangerous not with his fists, but with his words, with his position of authority, with his willingness to diminish others to feel bigger himself. He saw someone who'd learned techniques but not wisdom, who'd earned belts but not understanding. He saw someone Master Chen would have called technically proficient but spiritually empty. And Malik understood that this wasn't really about him. It was about these young students watching, learning from Darius that cruelty could be disguised as teaching, that humiliation could be packaged as motivation. If Malik walked away now, stayed silent, he would be complicit in that lesson. He would be allowing these kids to believe that might made right, that belts granted the authority to diminish others. Master Chen's voice echoed in his memory, "Sometimes, you fight not to win, but to teach. That is the highest form of martial art." Malik set down the mop. The sound of it resting against the wall echoed through the gym like a gavel falling. He walked toward the mat, each step measured, deliberate. His worn sneakers, the cheap kind from Walmart that he replaced every 6 months, made soft sounds against the floor. When he reached the edge of the mat, he paused and removed his shoes, placing them neatly to the side. It was a small gesture, but one rooted in respect for the training space, something he'd done thousands of times in Master Chen's school. When his socked feet touched the mat's surface, something imperceptible shifted in Malik's posture. His shoulders settled back and down. His spine straightened but remained fluid. His center of gravity dropped by perhaps an inch, making him look somehow more grounded, more present. His hands, which had gripped a mop handle moments before, hung loosely at his sides, fingers slightly curved, relaxed but aware. Darius didn't see it. He was too busy bouncing on his toes, throwing shadow punches, performing for his audience of phones and eager faces. "All right, old-timer. Show me what you got. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you. Light contact, like I said. Just enough to demonstrate proper technique versus whatever it is you've got." The students cheered. Bryce zoomed in with his camera, making sure to get both fighters in frame. Maya hit the "Go Live" button, and within seconds, viewers started trickling in. Jordan stood off to the side, arms crossed, grinning in anticipation. "This is educational content," Darius announced to the cameras. "We're about to see the difference between someone who's trained seriously and someone who hasn't. Watch how I control distance, how I set up combinations, how I read my opponent's movements, or in this case, lack of movements." He laughed at his own joke. Malik stood perfectly still, his breathing slow and even. His eyes tracked Darius with a softness that seemed almost meditative. To an untrained observer, he looked passive, perhaps even frightened. But something subtle was happening behind those calm eyes, a process of assessment that had been honed over decades. He noted how Darius bounced with his weight too far forward, how his chin lifted slightly when he felt confident, how his left hand dropped a fraction when he prepared to throw his right. These were the kinds of details Master Chen had taught him to see, the small tells that revealed everything about a fighter's intentions. "You ready, old man?" Darius asked, settling into his stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands up, classic Muay Thai positioning. "Whenever you are," Malik replied softly. Then Darius attacked. His first punch was a jab, sharp and fast, aimed at Malik's chest, meant to gauge distance, to test reactions, to set up whatever came next. It was thrown with good form, proper hip rotation, the kind of technique that came from hours of drilling. It should have landed easily against an untrained opponent. It never came close. Malik had shifted, just slightly, just enough. His torso rotated perhaps 3 inches to the left, causing Darius's fist to slice through empty air where his chest had been a heartbeat before. To the students watching, it almost looked like Darius had miscalculated the distance. But Darius knew better. He felt the wrongness of it, the way his target had simply vanished. He blinked, confused, his confidence flickering like a candle in wind. He reset quickly and threw a combination, jab, cross, hook. It was one of his go-to sequences, practiced thousands of times, used successfully in dozens of sparring matches. Each punch flowed into the next with practiced precision. This wasn't a wild attack, it was technical, controlled, the work of someone who genuinely put in hours. None of it touched Malik. He moved like water around stone, like wind through leaves. The jab found air. The cross passed within inches of his chin as he leaned back, his spine curving in a way that seemed to defy his age. The hook sailed past his ear as he dipped and shifted. Each evasion was minimal, no wasted motion, no dramatic ducking or weaving. He simply wasn't where the punches were aimed, and he achieved this with such economy of movement that it looked effortless. The students' laughter died in their throats. Bryce's phone trembled slightly in his suddenly uncertain hands. Maya's Instagram live chat started filling with confused comments. Wait, is the old guy good? Why can't the instructor hit him? This isn't what I expected. Stand still, Darius hissed, frustration bleeding into his voice like ink through paper. Malik didn't respond. His face remained calm, almost serene. His breathing stayed even, controlled, measured in a way that spoke of meditation halls in distant countries, of masters who taught that fighting was the last option, not the first. Watching him, it was impossible to tell whether he was exerting any effort at all. Darius tried a different approach. He feinted with his left, trying to draw a reaction, then threw a hard low kick aimed at Malik's lead leg, the kind of kick that could seriously hurt an unprepared person, potentially buckle their knee. It was faster than his punches, harder to see coming, and it committed his full body weight to the strike. Malik lifted his leg, a tiny adjustment in timing that made Darius's shin whistle through empty space. The momentum of the miss caused Darius to spin slightly, and for a fraction of a second, his back was partially turned to Malik. In that fraction of a second, Malik could have ended this. A strike to the kidney, a sweep of the supporting leg, a choke as Darius spun, any of these would have been available to someone with real skill. The students didn't see these opportunities, but Darius felt them, felt the vulnerability of his position, felt the terrifying possibility of what could have happened. But Malik did nothing. He simply reset, allowing Darius to recover his stance. "You're quick for an old guy," Darius admitted, his voice tight. Sweat was beginning to bead on his forehead now, though they'd barely been engaged for 90 seconds. "But moving around won't help you forever. Eventually, you'll have to actually fight. Is that what you think this is?" Malik asked quietly. "Fighting?" The question hung in the air, strange and unsettling. Jordan glanced at Maya, his expression uncertain. Bryce kept filming, but his cocky grin had faded. Darius attacked again, harder now, desperation creeping into his technique. He threw a Superman punch, a flashy technique where the fighter fakes a kick to mask a jumping punch. It was one of his showstopper moves, something that looked impressive and, when it landed, could genuinely hurt. He'd knocked out sparring partners with this technique. He'd won a provincial tournament with this exact move. Malik sidestepped it with the kind of grace that transcends technique and becomes art. The punch sailed past so cleanly that Darius literally stumbled forward from his own momentum, nearly falling. He caught himself, spun back toward Malik, and threw a wild combination, punches and kicks without much thought, just trying to overwhelm with volume and aggression. Still, nothing landed. Malik moved through the assault like a man walking through rain, letting every drop somehow miss him. His footwork was nearly invisible, tiny adjustments that kept him perpetually at the perfect distance, close enough that Darius felt pressured to attack, far enough that nothing could reach him. "Stop moving!" Darius shouted, and there was real anger in his voice now, the anger of someone confronting the limits of his understanding. "Fight me! Stop running!" "I'm not running," Malik said softly. "I'm here. I haven't taken a single step backward." Darius realized with a shock that this was true. Malik had shifted, rotated, swayed, but he'd remained in essentially the same spot on the mat. He hadn't retreated. Somehow, that made it worse. The students were dead silent now. Maya's live stream had over 200 viewers, and the comments were frantic. "Who is this old man? The instructor can't touch him. This is insane." Jordan had lowered his arms, his expression troubled. Bryce had stopped zooming in and out, just holding the phone steady, transfixed. Darius threw his best spinning back kick, his signature move, the one that had won him provincial tournaments, the one that had made students gasp in admiration during demonstrations. He put everything into it, all his frustration, all his desperate need to land something, anything. His body spun through the air with practiced precision, his heel aimed at Malik's ribs with enough force to crack bone. Malik sidestepped it so smoothly that it looked choreographed, like they'd practiced this dance 100 times. As Darius completed the spin, off balance and vulnerable, Malik did something no one expected. He touched him. Just a touch, one weathered hand placed gently on Darius's shoulder, barely any pressure. But in that touch was weight, precision, and 30 years of understanding about balance, leverage, and the human body's mechanics. Darius froze mid-motion, and suddenly he could feel it, the complete control Malik had over the situation. That single point of contact told him everything. It told him that Malik could have struck him a dozen times in the last 2 minutes. It told him that every wild punch and kick had left him exposed, vulnerable. It told him that he'd been completely at the mercy of someone who chose mercy over domination. "You're strong," Malik said softly, his voice carrying no mockery, no triumph, no vindication. "You've trained hard. I can see that. Your techniques are solid, your conditioning is good. But strength without humility is just noise. Power without respect is just cruelty." He removed his hand, and Darius stumbled slightly, as if that gentle touch had been the only thing keeping him upright. If Malik's calm strength just left you speechless, imagine what happens when someone underestimated shows their true power. Don't miss stories like this. Subscribe now and see how respect and courage can change everything. Darius stepped back, breathing hard, not from physical exertion but from the crushing weight of his own ignorance. His hands dropped to his sides. His carefully maintained confidence had evaporated like morning mist. Who are you?" he whispered, his voice small, stripped of its earlier arrogance. Malik turned away, walked back toward his mop with the same unhurried dignity he'd carried into the confrontation. "I'm the janitor," he said simply. "I clean these floors. I take out the trash. I make sure everything is ready for the next day's classes." "But you're not just a janitor," Maya said, her voice awed. She'd stopped filming, the significance of what she'd witnessed overriding her influencer instincts. "Nobody moves like that without serious training. Where did you learn?" Malik picked up his mop, held it like an old friend. For a moment, he seemed to be deciding whether to answer. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of memory. "Hong Kong. 1985 to 2000. I studied under Master Chen Wei." He saw the blank looks on their faces. "You wouldn't know him. He never competed, never promoted himself, never built a big school or a brand. He just taught. Taught real martial arts, the kind that's about discipline and character, not trophies and social media." 15 years, Bryce said, his phone forgotten at his side. "You trained for 15 years. I lived there for 15 years. Training was just part of life. Morning practice, evening practice, meditation, philosophy, tea with the master. It wasn't separate from life, it was life." Malik's eyes grew distant. Master Chen used to say that Western martial arts had lost its way. Too focused on fighting, not enough on why we fight or when we should fight. "Why did you stop?" Jordan asked. "If you were that good, why aren't you teaching? Why are you?" He gestured at the mop, unable to finish the sentence without sounding cruel. "Master Chen died in 2000. After that, I came home to Toronto. My wife was sick, cancer. She needed me. I had a daughter to raise alone after my wife passed 2 years later." Malik shrugged. "Life happens. I needed work. Janitorial work is honest, it pays the bills, and it doesn't require explaining my past to people who wouldn't understand." "But your skills," Maya protested. That's like a concert pianist working as a dishwasher. It's such a waste." Malik smiled gently. "Is it? I raised my daughter. She's a doctor now, working in Vancouver. I kept a roof over our heads, food on the table. I maintained my practice privately, in my own time. Master Chen taught me that martial arts isn't about what you do for others to see, it's about who you are when no one's watching. He looked at each of them in turn. The real waste would be using these skills for ego. For showing off. For putting people down to feel bigger. The implication hung heavy in the air. Darius's face flushed with shame. I was a fool, Darius said quietly. I treated you like you were beneath me because of your job. Because I thought I knew what made someone valuable. He looked at his black belt, hanging around his waist like an accusation. This doesn't mean anything, does it? Not really. It means you've learned techniques, Malik said. That's not nothing. Techniques matter. But Master Chen used to say there are 3 levels of martial artist. The first level learns to fight. The second level learns when to fight. The third level learns how to live so that fighting becomes unnecessary. He gestured around the gym. You've reached the first level. These students look up to you. What you teach them, how you treat people, that determines whether you'll reach the second level. Bryce was the first to move. He walked over to Malik, and without a word, he bowed, a real bow, deep and genuine, the kind that comes from sudden humility. Sir, I'm sorry. I was disrespectful. We all were. We judged you without knowing anything about you. You shouldn't need to know my background to treat me with respect, Malik said, but his voice was kind. That's the lesson here. Everyone deserves dignity, regardless of their job or their age or what they can do for you. That's not martial arts philosophy, that's just being human. One by one, the other students approached and bowed. Maya, her eyes red like she might cry. Jordan, looking troubled and thoughtful. Even Darius, after a long moment of visible internal struggle, walked over and bowed deeply. I'm sorry, Malik, Darius said. I thought I was teaching them about martial arts, but I was really teaching them to be like me, arrogant, dismissive, cruel. That's not what I wanted, but that's what I was doing. He looked up, meeting Malik's eyes. Would you consider teaching? Here, I mean. Real teaching, not just techniques. Malik was quiet for a long moment, considering. He'd avoided this for 15 years, avoided any connection to the martial arts world beyond his private practice. But looking at these young people, seeing the hunger in their eyes for something deeper than just fighting skills, he felt something shift. I'll think about it, he said finally. But I won't teach fighting. If I teach, it's philosophy. Ethics. The things that matter when you're not on the mat. That's what we need, Maya said earnestly. Coach Darius, no offense, coach, he's great at the physical stuff. But there's something missing. Tonight showed us that. Darius nodded, accepting the criticism with grace that hadn't been there an hour ago. She's right. I know techniques, but I don't know this. He gestured at Malik. Whatever you have, whatever made you able to do what you just did, not just the physical stuff, but the restraint, the dignity, the way you handled all of us without ever being cruel back. That's what real mastery looks like. That's what 30 years of practice looks like, Malik corrected gently. And losing people you love. And making mistakes and learning from them. And choosing, every day, to be better than you were yesterday. He picked up his mop again. I have work to finish. You all should get home. It's late. But none of them moved. They stood there, processing, trying to reconcile the man they dismissed with the master they just witnessed. Can I ask you something? Jordan said finally. During the sparring, and I know it wasn't really sparring, did you ever think about actually hitting him? Like, were you tempted? Malik considered the question. No. Temptation implies struggle. Master Chen trained us past temptation. When someone attacks you out of ignorance, responding with violence just spreads ignorance. Better to show them a different way. But what if he'd actually hurt you? Bryce asked. What if one of those punches had landed? A small smile played at the corner of Malik's mouth. None of them were going to land. But if one had, I would have adjusted. That's what defense is, continuous adjustment, reading, responding. Master Chen used to make us spar blindfolded to develop that sense. Blindfolded? Maya's eyes widened. That's possible. Everything is possible with enough practice and the right teacher. But it's not magic, it's just understanding body mechanics, listening to subtle cues, training your mind to process information faster than your conscious thought. He started mopping again, the familiar motion grounding him. You all have potential. You're young, dedicated. You've put in work. But don't let belts or titles make you think you've arrived. Martial arts is a lifetime journey. The moment you think you've mastered it, you've lost it. Darius watched Malik work for a moment, then began helping, picking up stray equipment, organizing the corner where extra pads were kept. The students followed his lead, tidying the space they treated as their own private domain minutes before. The atmosphere had completely transformed. The arrogance and mockery had been replaced by something quieter, more thoughtful. Master Chen, Maya said, pulling out her phone again, but this time for research, not content. I can't find much about him online. He died before the internet really took off, Malik explained. And he wouldn't have cared about online presence anyway. He taught maybe 30 students total in his entire life. Small classes, deep teaching. Quality over quantity. How many of those students reached mastery? Jordan asked. Define mastery, Malik replied. If you mean technical proficiency, all of them. If you mean true understanding. He paused thoughtfully. Maybe 3 of us. The rest moved on, took what they learned and applied it to other pursuits. That was fine too. Master Chen didn't measure success by how many fighters he produced. What did he measure it by? Bryce asked. By how his students treated people. By whether they made the world a little better. By whether they could walk through life with strength but without arrogance. Malik finished mopping the last section of floor. He used to say the highest achievement in martial arts is to never have to use it. To carry such presence, such calm authority, that violence never becomes necessary. Is that what you did tonight? Darius asked. You never actually hit me. You just showed me how completely outclassed I was. I showed you that what you know is just the beginning, Malik corrected. Not to make you feel small, but to open your eyes to how much more there is to learn. If that lesson hurt your pride, good. Pride needed hurting. The clock on the wall showed it was nearly midnight. The students gathered their belongings slowly, reluctant to leave, as if walking out would break the spell of what they'd experienced. Same time next Thursday? Darius asked Malik. I mean, if you're willing. I'd like you to talk to the advanced class. Share some of Master Chen's philosophy. You don't have to demonstrate or anything, just talk. I think they need to hear this. Malik considered. I'll think about it. No promises. That's all I can ask. Darius extended his hand. Malik shook it, and in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a mutual respect that hadn't existed before. The students filed out, each stopping to bow to Malik one more time. When they were gone, Malik finished his cleaning in the peaceful silence. He took out the trash, wiped down equipment, checked that all the windows were locked. The same routine he'd done for 2 years, but somehow it felt different tonight. As he gathered his supplies to leave, he paused by the mat where the confrontation had taken place. For a moment, he could almost hear Master Chen's voice, you see. The universe puts us where we need to be, presents us with the lessons we need to teach. You did well tonight, student. One Thursday, a young man entered the gym just as Malik was finishing. 22, maybe 23, wearing a black belt from a different school. He had that familiar look in his eyes, hungry, aggressive, something to prove. "You're Malik Rivers," the young man said. It wasn't a question. "I am. I've seen the videos. Read the book. Everyone talks about you like you're some kind of legend." Malik continued mopping. "I'm a janitor. That's all. Come on, man. Everyone knows you were a master. Trained in Hong Kong, never defeated, all that. I want to test myself against you. See if the legend is real." Malik looked at him, really looked at him. He saw his younger self, the angry kid who'd flown to Hong Kong looking for validation through violence. He saw Darius from 15 years ago, looking for hierarchy to climb. He saw every student who'd ever confused fighting ability with personal worth. "No," Malik said simply. "No. Just like that. What if I insist?" There was a threat in the young man's voice, poorly disguised as bravado. "Then you'll have learned nothing from my story." Malik set down his mop and walked closer. "You want to know if I'm as good as people say? You want to test yourself against me? That's ego talking. That's the part of you that thinks defeating an old man would make you more valuable." The young man's face flushed. "I just want. You want validation. You want a story to tell. You want to either beat me and prove the legend was false, or lose to me and have an excuse for why you lost. Either way, you're seeking your worth in fighting. That's not martial arts. That's just violence with a belt around it. So you're afraid." Malik smiled gently. "I'm 77 years old. My knees hurt when it rains. My back gets stiff if I sit too long. Could I still handle myself? Probably. But that's not the point." He gestured around the empty gym. "Look around. What do you see?" "A gym. I see a place where people come to transform. Not to beat each other, but to build each other up. That's what my teacher taught me. That's what I've spent 30 years teaching others." He picked up his mop again. "You want to test yourself? Find a teacher who cares more about your growth than your ability to hurt people. Train for 10 years. Then come back and tell me what you've learned. Not about fighting, about yourself." The young man stood there, uncertain, the confrontation he'd anticipated dissolving into something else entirely. After a long moment, he bowed, a small bow, tentative, but genuine. "Thank you," he said quietly, and left. Malik finished his cleaning, locked up, and walked out into the Toronto night. The city had changed so much in the decades he'd lived here, yet somehow remained fundamentally itself, diverse, energetic, complicated, beautiful. He walked to the subway station, an old man in work clothes, carrying a quiet power that no one noticed because no one looked past the surface. And that was exactly how he preferred it. Because true mastery, he'd learned, wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing the potential in others, seeing the opportunities to teach, seeing the choice points where you could either diminish someone or help them grow. The janitor who became a legend by refusing to act like one. The master who chose the mop over the spotlight. The teacher who understood that the highest achievement wasn't in defeating opponents, but in transforming them into something better. That was Malik Rivers. That was the last lesson of Master Chen Wei, still teaching, still growing, still evolving through the hands of a student who'd learned that real strength lay not in dominance, but in dignity. Not in victory, but in service. Not in what you could take from the world, but in what you could give to it. Remember Malik, not just for that one night when he showed his skill, but for the decades before and after when he showed his character. Remember that everyone you meet carries stories you haven't heard, skills you haven't seen, wisdom you haven't imagined. Remember that respect isn't earned through hierarchy or achievement, it's given because we're all human, all worthy, all deserving of dignity. And remember that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who choose not to fight, who pick up a mop instead of raising a fist, who teach through patience instead of domination, who understand that true power is measured not by who you can defeat, but by who you can help become their best self. If this story touched you, if it changed how you see the people around you, if it reminded you that every person you meet deserves respect regardless of their job or status, then share it. Not for the views or likes, but because these lessons need to spread, because dignity needs champions, because the world needs more people who understand what Malik understood, that the highest form of strength is choosing mercy when you could choose violence, choosing service when you could choose glory, choosing to lift others up instead of tearing them down. That's the janitor's way. That's the warrior's path.